He wasn't supposed to become a chef. Long before the kitchens, before the cameras, before the shouting, the pressure, and the relentless standards, Gordon Ramsay had a completely different future mapped out in front of him. Football wasn't just something he enjoyed in his spare time. It wasn't just a passion or a hobby. It was everything. Growing up in Scotland, it was the one thing that gave his life direction, structure, and a clear sense of purpose. A way forward, a way out. And for a while, it worked. He wasn't just playing casually with friends or for fun. He was good enough to be taken seriously by people who understood the game. Good enough to train with professionals. Good enough to get within reach of something most people only ever dream about, but never touch. A real career, a real identity, because at that level, it stops being just a goal you're chasing. It becomes who you are. Every decision you make, every single day, every ounce of effort you put in, all of it is aligned toward one direction. And when you're that deeply committed to something, you stop imagining alternatives. There is no backup plan. There is no second version of your life waiting on the side. There's just this. And for Gordon Ramsay, this was supposed to be it. A life on the pitch, a career built on discipline, competition, and total control. But the dangerous thing about building your entire identity around one single path is that if it breaks, everything breaks with it. It didn't fade away slowly. It didn't give him time to process what was happening or prepare for what was coming next. It just ended. An injury. The kind that doesn't just slow you down, doesn't just set you back for a few months, but stops you completely. One moment, you're chasing a future that feels certain, something you've invested years into, something that finally feels within reach, and the next, it's gone. Not because you made the decision to walk away, not because you lost belief, discipline, or drive, but because your body made the decision for you. And that's what makes it different. This wasn't failure in the traditional sense. This wasn't about not being good enough to make it. This was removal. Everything he had built his identity around, every plan he had committed to, every expectation he had for his future suddenly had nowhere to go. And that kind of loss doesn't just change what you do day to day, it changes how you see yourself. Because when your path disappears overnight, you're forced to confront something far more uncomfortable than failure. If you're not that person anymore, then who are you? There's no applause for this part, no recognition, no one watching or guiding you through it, just silence. And the weight of realizing that the version of your life you believed in, the one you were working toward every single day, is no longer possible. For most people, this is the moment where everything begins to fall apart. This is the part no one talks about. Not the dream, not the success, but the space in between. The part where everything slows down, where the noise disappears, and you're left alone with your own thoughts. Where the structure you relied on suddenly vanishes, and you're forced to rebuild something from nothing, without even knowing what it's supposed to become. There's no momentum here, no clear direction pulling you forward, no system guiding your decisions, no external validation telling you that you're on the right path. Just time, and the quiet, growing pressure of needing to figure it all out. Because when you lose something that once defined you, you don't immediately replace it with something better. You hesitate. You question everything you thought you knew about yourself. You start to wonder if that was your one real opportunity, the one version of your life that was supposed to work, and whether you've already lost it. This is where most people settle, not because they lack ambition or potential, but because starting over feels heavier than staying where you are. Easier to accept something ordinary than to rebuild from zero while everyone else seems to be moving forward. And that's what makes this stage so dangerous. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel like failure. It feels quiet, almost invisible. But it's in that quiet that people slowly begin to lower their expectations, to let go of what they once wanted and accept something smaller. For Gordon Ramsay, this could have been the end of ambition, a slow drift into something safe, predictable, controlled, a life that looks stable from the outside, but feels incomplete on the inside. And for a moment, it almost was. It didn't start as a grand decision. There was no sudden realization, no defining moment where everything became clear, no instant clarity, no sense of certainty about the future, just an opening, something different, something unfamiliar, cooking, not glamorous, not prestigious, not even close to the life he had imagined for himself. In fact, it felt like a step down, from the intensity of professional sport to the uncertainty of starting over in a completely new world, because that's what it was, starting over, at the very bottom, learning something from scratch, while carrying the weight of everything that didn't work out before. And that's the part people underestimate, the ego, the frustration of going from almost having it to having nothing again, the internal resistance that builds when you're forced to rebuild your life in a direction you never planned for. Because when you've already seen a version of your future, anything else feels like a compromise, like you're settling, like you're stepping away from what you were supposed to become. But here's where the shift begins. Instead of walking away from discipline, he carried it with him, the same mindset, the same intensity, the same willingness to push through discomfort, just applied somewhere new, and slowly, what once felt like a fallback, something temporary, something uncertain started to take shape, not as a replacement for what he lost, but as a new arena, one that demanded just as much, if not more. And without realizing it at first, he wasn't starting from zero. He was starting again, with everything he had already built inside him. This is where everything changes, because cooking, at this level, isn't creative. It isn't expressive in the way people imagine. It's brutal. The kitchens he stepped into weren't welcoming environments. They weren't places where you were guided gently or allowed time to grow at your own pace. They were high-pressure systems, built on precision, speed, and absolute control. Every movement mattered. Every second counted. Every mistake had consequences. Mistakes weren't quietly corrected. They were exposed, called out immediately, often in front of everyone, because in that environment, there's no room to hide. Every service felt like a test you could fail at any moment. Every plate, a direct reflection of your discipline, your focus, your standard. And the people training him weren't there to motivate. They weren't there to support you emotionally or make you feel comfortable. They were there to push you past your limits, to break you down, to see if anything solid was underneath. Long hours that blurred into one continuous cycle. Relentless expectations that never softened. No shortcuts, no excuses, no room for hesitation. This wasn't just about learning recipes or techniques. This was transformation through pressure. And for most people, it's too much. The stress, the pace, the constant demand to perform without slipping. It breaks them. But for someone who had already lived inside discipline, who understood repetition, structure, and mental endurance from sport, this environment wasn't foreign. It was familiar. The kitchen became a new kind of battlefield. And instead of resisting it, instead of pulling back, he leaned into it. He adapted to it. Faster, sharper, more controlled. Because what looked like chaos from the outside was actually a system. And he wasn't just learning how to survive in it anymore. He was learning how to master it. He didn't become someone new. That's what most people get wrong. This wasn't a complete reinvention. It wasn't him abandoning who he was and starting from nothing. He refined who he already was. The discipline he built through football, the obsession with improvement, the intolerance for mistakes. It didn't disappear. It carried over, just in a different form. Because at the highest level, it doesn't matter what field you're in. The mindset is the same. Precision, consistency, control, and above all, the refusal to accept anything less than excellence. What people saw as aggression was actually standards. What looked like anger was intensity, sharpened over years of pressure. Because when you've experienced losing your path once, you don't take the next one lightly. You don't move casually. You don't assume there will always be another chance. You protect it. You push it further. You become relentless about it. And that's what started to separate him. Not just talent, not just opportunity, but the way he approached the work. Every detail mattered. Every service counted. Every mistake was unacceptable, because this wasn't just a career anymore. It was proof. Proof that starting over didn't weaken him. It didn't set him back. It refined him, made him sharper, more focused, more dangerous in his execution. Because he didn't lose his first identity, he repurposed it. And in doing that, he became something more than just a chef. He became someone built for dominance. And eventually, it showed. Not slowly, not quietly, not in a way that could be ignored, but undeniably. The results started to speak for themselves. Michelin stars, restaurants, recognition at the highest level, a reputation that extended far beyond a single kitchen, far beyond a single city. Because when that level of discipline compounds over time, it doesn't stay hidden. It becomes visible. It becomes impossible to ignore. But what made it different was how it was built, not on natural talent alone, not on luck or timing, but on pressure, on repetition, on years of operating at a standard most people wouldn't tolerate for a single day. And that's why it scaled. From kitchens, to global recognition, to television, to a brand that people all over the world recognize instantly. Because the same intensity that defined his training translated into everything he touched, every restaurant, every show, every decision. The standard never dropped. And that's what people connected to. Not just the skill, but the mindset behind it. Because dominance isn't something you reach once and then keep forever. It's something you maintain. Every day, every service, every moment you choose not to lower your standard. And that's what set him apart. Not just becoming great, but staying there. From the outside, it looks like a success story. A chef who built a global empire. A career defined by recognition, influence, and dominance. But that's not what this really is. This isn't just about success. It's about loss. About having everything you built your identity around taken away from you without warning, without control. Because most people spend their lives trying to avoid that moment. They stay in situations that no longer challenge them, that no longer fulfill them, simply because it's familiar, because it feels safe, because starting over feels too uncertain. But in his case, starting over wasn't a choice. It was forced, and that's what makes the difference. Because without that break, without that moment where everything collapsed, this version of his life never exists.